Welcome back, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I hope everybody had a good lunch break and maybe a chance to talk to other participants about some of the messages that we heard in the morning. We now move on with our afternoon session, beginning with an inspirational talk. And I think many of us probably flew here to Stockholm. I have to admit I did. Others who are based nearby perhaps were mindful of CO2 and took rail. Whichever one was your transport mode to get here, it's quite fascinating to think that those modes tend to have so much lower risks than when we get into a car to drive to the airport or the train station or to go home at the end of the conference. And that was mentioned several times this morning as well. Why is it that we accept that discrepancy in risk? Why is it that we seem to take road risk for granted? That is the focus of our talk, and it will be delivered by the Traffic Safety Director at the Swedish Transport Administration, Maria Krafft. The floor is yours. Welcome.
So, dear traffic safety friends, I'm honored to be here. And, over time, we have become so much more critical when it comes to the road fatalities. And that is really good because it's a man-made system, so we really could make a difference. I will talk a little bit about some solutions that could make it more safe globally and not only in the high-income countries. But I will start with some numbers and that we have a lot of disasters on different places. And we have 25 million fatal injury during this century, modern time. And approximately 2 million are children up to 14 years of age. The traditional way of how to solve this problem is to focus on the individual behavior and how we could educate and how we can influence in a different way, rather than increasing and invest in changes when it comes to systemic and policies. And we know that systemic and policy levels is more effective and proven have more long-lasting effects. But we keep up building wide streets that we know encouraging higher speeds, that we know deliver a worse outcome, especially for the unprotected road users. We are addressing an urgent problem with bad solutions. We continue to set high speed limits, even if we know that they are dangerous. We continue to mix people with completely different speeds instead of have adequate separations, for instance, with bike lanes and sidewalks. And this kind of solutions, then the traffic safety solution is no one can make a mistake. Instead, we could have safety as a boundary condition. We could build much more roundabouts. We could do safety islands on the pedestrian crossings. There's many things we can do, so if something happens, it will come out well. But we're building the road system on the fact that we should take the right decision in all situations, and we should understand the risk. We should understand the risk in completely different situations, in very complex, various situations, and that is not a sustainable solution. Human errors solved with education and regulation is not enough. And I'll see how good you are to estimate a risk. If you're sitting in the blue car, you're driving 50 km per hour, You have a red car behind you that's driving 60 kilometers per hour. A pedestrian is taking a step out on the pedestrian crossings. What speed would the red car be at when the blue car has stopped? Think of a number. I think you should double it, at least. It is 40 kilometers per hour. It's very hard for us to estimate the mechanical energy. And it's hard for the person that's sitting in the car, and it's hard for the person that's outside the car. So we really need to have a more systemic perspective on this area. So what is an acceptable risk? For instance, there's a golden standard based on rails, where you say that serious errors per operating hour of 1 per billion. That's the golden standard. And if you take that standard and look into Europe, then you would say that a maximum of 30 fatalities. And the real outcome is around 8. If we translate these numbers into the road system, the traffic, and saying that a person is in the traffic 1 hour a day, then if we take the in Europe, we will have, with the golden standard, 186 fatalities instead of 26,000. And in the US, you can see it's more or less, it's even worse, different numbers. So why do we accept such high risks in the road system? Why is that? Some would say that it's more a passive mood that you're in the rail system. But actually, if you look at pedestrians or children, it's a quite passive mood as well. So we really should think of what would be the golden standard. What risk level could we accept in the system? It's really new conditions now when traffic safety and the transport system is incorporated in the agenda. That means new possibilities, because there's a lot of SDG goals that has a lot together with traffic safety. They have a lot to gain to be treated together. And that is actually something that the academic expert group has adopted. So because of this conference, there were an academic expert group was tasked with evaluating the last decade, but also pointing out important tools and processes to further develop to make road actions more effective. And they came out, or I'm in the group, with 9 recommendations. And the focus on them are, how can we further incorporate the safe system? And how can some of the SDGs could give something to traffic safety? How could it contribute to traffic safety and vice versa? And how could we more comprehensive integrate traffic safety activity into policy making, but also into our daily operation of organizations' value chain? Out there in the traffic, a large part of the traffic belongs to a company's value chain. We expect that these actors, they have their climate footprints in order. We should expect that they have their traffic safety footprints in order. You should know how many, the number and rate of fatalities of the employees in road traffic crashes. You should know the number and rate of fatalities in the road traffic system for third party. The organization should know how their fleet, how their vehicle fleet are routed and driven, and be sure of it's not speeding. There are systems that could support that, so you can have information on an aggregated level. Multinational companies' supply chain very often start in low and middle-income countries and end up in high-income countries. And supply chains associated with multinational organizations, they account for over 80% of the global trade, and they employ 1 out of 5 workers. So there's a huge power if organizations adopting traffic safety activities. That would be substantial. So important tools for that is both procurement and sustainability reporting in order to stimulate the market. And why should big companies bother about their value chain? Why should they look into traffic safety? Many companies would do this and already are doing it, but also they're interested where the investors will put their money. And there is a reshaping on the finance market. The investors are looking for companies that are more sustainable because there is no business on a dead planet. And the BlackRock, they invest $7 trillion. And their message to the market is very clear. We will not vote on management teams that do not make progress on sustainability. So the investors, they are following the public and private procurement requirements so they can understand what is a sustainable company. And the public procurement account for between 10 and 20% of the GDP, which is a substantial part of the economy. And for the private sector, at least in Europe, companies that have more than 500 employees, they need to have a sustainability report and they need to have sustainable procurements. I will end up with 2 companies that have ensured their sustainability transports when it comes to their value chain, when it comes to speeding and pollutions, and also noise. And they're using modern technique, geofencing, where you use the GPS position so that you can know, you can have a limit of the speed, and you can also change what drive line it is, so you can change to electrical drive. There's a bus company in Gothenburg. They have one of the routes are geofenced, and the maximum speed is 30 km/h, and they also an engine, electrical engine on different parts of that route. And in Stockholm, another kind of geofencing solution is to make possible to have nighttime deliveries, so you will not disturb people living around. And they are delivering goods to McDonald's at nighttime, and so they can be an off-peak. And they have only electrical engine and the maximum of 45 km/h. I would say there's a new possibility now when traffic safety is incorporated in the agenda. Let us use that. Let us use those possibilities. We should also rethink of what we mean. What is an acceptable level? What is an acceptable risk level in road traffic system? If we design the road system based on the human tolerances, so if a crash will occur, we will survive. That is a safe system. Thank you.